One of the dominant theories in motivation is the self-determination theory. Essentially the idea that everybody needs some form of autonomy, relatedness, and control. And that's ultimately what motivates a person. So one of the basic ideas behind this theory that was developed by Deci and Ryan is that people start an activity with intrinsic motivation. This makes sense. So taking it into sports, I sign up for a sports team or a sports league or a sports class because I have an interest in participating in this activity. At a youth or a developmental, there's not a necessarily an external. Nobody's getting paid to play youth sports. That's not a motivator. It's an internal motivation. We want to have fun. We want to play with friends. Just have a positive experience. These are the motivators for participation. But when we talk about coaches, and especially speaking about elite coaches, one of the things that people identify is their ability to motivate. And this would be a form of external motivation, is how a coach gives the big pep talk before a game or the halftime speech, and how a coach can motivate players to play hard. And so I think if we look at it from both ends of the spectrum, then something happens between the time a player starts participating in a sport and by the time that they reach elite participation. Because we're saying that children join a sports because they're intrinsically motivated. They really want to do it. But then by the time they reach elite sports, they need somebody else to motivate them to participate or to play harder or whatever the case may be. So somewhere in that developmental pathway, things are going wrong. We've taken away the intrinsic or internal motivation from the athletes and have to replace it with more and more and more external motivation. So I think as we talk about how can we get more players to participate, how can we keep players participating or physically active for a longer period of time, how can we develop better players, one of the things that we need to think about is what's going wrong, what is causing this switch in motivation. Now obviously as we get older and the level of competition increases, winning becomes important, and that would be an external factor. But I think there's a way that we can continue to have some internal regulation or intrinsic motivation while acknowledging that winning also has some value and is a part of that motivation. But somewhere along the line, we're losing the intrinsic motivation, in some cases almost completely, and replacing it with coaches having to exhort players, throughout games, throughout practices, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, if we really want to increase participation and develop better athletes, we need to take a look at what's going on in that period of years from beginner to elite and what's causing the motivations to shift.